Okay, so on the show today, ahead of the conference, William Bloom. So this man is a bit of a legend in some circles. He's extremely well known. He's author of 26 books, including The Endorphin Effect and The Power of Modern Spirituality. I think he's probably best known for the intersection of health and spirituality in a sort of very down-to-earth British way. Educator, activist, founder and director of the Spiritual Companions Trust. Adrian Harris, who's involved with the conference, mentioned him to me years ago. So when I saw us at the conference, I said, I'd love to interview him. So William, joining us from Glastonbury, I believe. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Good to be with you.
How did you get interested in what you do now? What was the beginning of it for you?
Well, you've got two separate topics here. One is body and health, and the other is metaphysics and spirituality. Metaphysics, spirituality was with me from the age of 4 or 5. Just a natural sense of the wonder of life, the blue of the sky, and atmospheres. You know, I could always feel atmospheres. Somebody came into our house, I could immediately pick up whether they were a nice guy or not such a nice creature. And funnily enough, my dad was a psychiatrist,
okay.
And his intuition radar was not that great. And there were kind of multiple occasions when people would come into where we lived and I would be going, hello, alarm bells, you know, little red flashing lights. And my dad would be naive. Hand in hand with that was because he was an atheistic psychiatrist. I couldn't chat with him about any of the more subtle intuitive stuff. So I kind of kept quiet about it. And then the embodiment stuff, that didn't come until much later, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, it didn't happen until I was in my late 20s, early 30s. I was way up in my head. I was a novelist, writer, publisher, editor, interested in energy, but it always came from up in my head, a sense of being up in my head. And then, dun, 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 I fell in love.
Oh, so falling in love was your gateway to the body.
So I had my first fully embodied experience, right? And at the same time, 2 other things happened. I had a friend in California, old London friend in California who had a load of dosh, and he kept flying me over to have body work.
Uh-huh.
So I started experiencing body work in Esalen and down the West Coast.
Okay.
And then at the same time, I decided to do some soft martial arts and Tai Chi. And there was a local teacher who he said he'd only take students if they'd meet him at 6 a.m. next to a river.
Nice. Commitment.
So he met at 6 a.m. next to a river. And I started to experience being in my body properly. And the benefits were immense, of course.
Okay, lots to open up there. So intuitive experiences at a young age, understanding maybe there's a bit more going on that it's not necessarily picked up on by everyone. And, you know, it can be obvious, can't it? It can be like, hey, why is everyone not getting this? It's not obvious. That guy's not to be trusted, or that person's lovely, or whatever it is. And realizing maybe there's another layer of communication that not everyone's picking up on. Something like that in the sort of early years?
Yeah, but something bigger than that as well. It was like,
okay.
look, there was... It's not religious, but just a kind of sense that the blue of the sky was this enormous, fantastic temple.
Okay.
Or maybe
the transcendent, the profound,
just beauty, a sense of beauty, and that went hand in hand with. From about 4 or 5 years old, I remember watching if a child was being bullied at school. I remember a deep instinct in me that this is not right.
Mm-hmm.
This is not right. There needs to be an intervention. Bullying needs to stop. So there was a mixture of my heart opening to injustice and a sense of the sheer beauty of the cosmos. And I kind of assumed when people were using words like God or Allah, that that's what they were talking about. But why they decided to turn it into a man with a beard, I never quite understood. You know, it was just something huge and wonderful.
And here we are with our beards, William.
Here we are, indeed,
years later.
So
gateways then. So one gateway is beauty, right? This something so beautiful. Another gateway I heard you mention there was love. You know, something that's a sexual aspect of that. It was for me at 16. It really dragged me into my body and emotions in a way I wasn't expecting.
You're lucky. You're lucky to have had that embodied experience as a teenager.
I all credit to Sally. I think is the key credit there, Jude.
Okay.
So instantly,
just to say, because this is a good topic for people. I think just to say, as a teenager and in my early 20s, I was having intimate relationships with people I loved,
right.
but I wasn't opening up. I wasn't flowing with it. I wasn't embodied, and it took the actual experience of falling head over heels into chemistry to bring me suddenly go, work, what is this? Oh, this is my body. I'm having pleasure and feeling in the whole of my body, right? But I think a lot of people do have intimacy, do have sex, but don't have any experience other than a kind of a shiver of climax.
I thought everybody did. I thought that was just what sex was until I had sex with someone I didn't love quite so much a year later. And I was like, oh, well, that was pleasant, but in no way. I would say, well, I started asking, don't you have blinding white lights, and don't you have transcendent losing yourself in the ocean of the other? And people were like, no, I just come and it feels nice. So I was like, oh, okay, I thought that was what it was. So I guess I was lucky. And then you also mentioned something which is, I guess, a theme I've heard in another interview of yours, which is when people can get into the transcendent or the esoteric or the new age, sometimes it's a bit of an up and out thing, lots of visualizing, lots of sort of rainbows and unicorns. And you describe it elsewhere as getting into the marrow of the body. I think it's a Taoist term, I believe.
Yeah.
Say a little bit about that, because that's the kind of, the embodiment.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about an extreme polarity there. At one end of the spectrum, we have people who, for one reason or another, enjoy the self-soothing and the escape that comes from visualizations and transcendent experiences that are dissociated from their bodies. Often they're folk that are introverts and very sensitive, therefore they don't like the impact of human interaction. And often, in my opinion, from experience, there are also people who've suffered some kind of trauma. And it's safer for them to be out of the body. Now, at the other end of the spectrum, we have a internal martial arts exercise, for example, bone marrow breathing, where in a state of being deeply at ease and embodied in martial arts, you call it inhara, a term which I assume you're very familiar with, right? But inhara, you then, as you connect with the, what's the right language here, the energy field of the cosmos, the waves of the Tao, whatever you call it, that you allow that sense of connection to be breathed deep into your bones. And then the advice is, in that form of internal martial arts, do it softly. Softly is what lands it deep in the bones. And it's an interesting paradox between the discipline of daring to do it and the softness required to land it.
And is there, if we can think of a trap or a mistake, at one end of the spectrum, it's the leaving the body, the transcendent, the escapism maybe. And I think that's pretty well documented in the sort of critiques of the New Age. And I'm associated with that personally. And then I wonder, for someone like myself, who's much more sort of immanently orientated, like I like fucking and fighting, that was me as a young man, particularly. And as I've got older, I've started to be more interested in Qigong and Tai Chi and, more subtle things. Like, is there a risk at the other end of the spectrum? Is it just being closed-minded? Is it being a bit stuck in the mud? Like, what's the risk of the other end of the spectrum?
Well, the risk is worse than what you've just named.
Okay.
The risk is bullying, because people who are deep in their bodies and have a sense of their own physicality, like, let's take it to an extreme example, a sumo wrestler, right?
Okay.
There's no necessary connection, is there, between that embodiment, him being deeply in hara, and him having a kind heart. So, for example,
an MMA fighter, even, like a cage fighter. Or something.
I mean, I was a biker. I rode in a bike club. I rode, not a member of the English Hells Angels, and so I'm very familiar with men who use their physical presence in order to frighten other people, right? And they don't even think about it. They may like fighting. They just come in and their bodies are oomphy. So oomphy, is that a new clinical term for aggressive? Anyway.
Say it again.
I just made it oomphy, I said.
Oomphy, having oomph.
Yeah. So I you know, so in terms of your question about other polarities, yes, that the person is deeply embodied and a strong, physically confident, able to fight person, that 1000% needs to be balanced with chivalry and an opening of the heart to kindness and love. Otherwise, it's just a hefty beast in the jungle who can get their way.
Yeah, there's a power there that's developed, and I'm aware of that temptation for sure. I can dominate, for example, without too much difficulty, even not physically. You know, I don't have to physically threaten anyone, just with presence. That's possible compared to the average British guy. Though here in Russia, it's a little bit more tricky. But certainly, you see that archetype quite commonly in Russia.
Russian culture, violence is more upfront. Aggression, creative aggression, is much more upfront.
Yeah.
But the point here is, you know, especially as someone who's, I speak as someone who's deeply into metaphysics, I do not see any other purpose to embodiment than to radiate kindness into humanity and help shift the species. If you're just going to radiate kindness in order to be a better boss, I mean, just if you're just going to enable embodiment in order to succeed in capitalism, I'm not very interested.
So spiritual materialism, embodied materialism, right? Like I can be more embodied so I can, you know, I don't know, make more money or be a better pickup artist or, you know, something like that.
On the other hand, my 26-year-old daughter at the moment is doing boxing. And it's great. It's great that she's doing boxing.
It's just good for her.
It's really, really good in terms of bringing her into the body. My wife, Sabrina, she started Taekwondo at the age of 50. She's now second Dan black belt and competing, you know.
Very cool.
You can see how good it is for them to have that embodied confidence, you know.
Yes.
But I, on the other hand, you know, ex-biker, blah, 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 I needed to soften.
Who's it for, right? Like last night I was teaching Japanese weapons in a quite aggressive way to a group of young Russian women. And I said, so, you know, for some of you, this is wonderful medicine. For others, you should not do this at all. This is going to be terrible for you. So it's finding the right medicine for the right person, right?
Why did you think it would be terrible for them?
Well, some of them are already sort of sharpened swords as human beings. And the last thing they need is, you know, something that makes them even more deeply neurotic in their current control pattern. Whereas others, you know, there's one young lady, for example, who lacked confidence and she didn't have much extension in her whole body, and holding the sword just gave her this wonderful feeling of extension. I thought, oh, that's beautiful. That's so good for you. Please do this every day. You know, so that was, you know, some ones I took aside and said, maybe this is a good practice for you.